Can you draw that well?
No.
What I liked about this movie was the fact that things weren't neatly wrapped up, that they didn't suddenly discover each of them didn't discover a new love and sort of right their lives that, from going in the wrong direction. But they did get a fresh start, and it was left up to them and to the audience to sort of decide what will happen to them. With an ending that sort of open-ended, how hard was it to get this movie made?
It was a major problem. Talking to distributors, they really wanted a resolution for certainly for Sid's character. There were a lot of suggestions that Sid should end up with Maya, and that we should see that. And Mahesh and I both felt very strongly that simply wasn't the point of the film. Was for everything to be wrapped up neatly in a bow. Life is never that easy, unfortunately. A lot of people that we talked to distribution-wise also wanted more of a resolution between Sid and Ashok after the slap. The next scene you see them, he walks out the door and decides to help him, plant these trees. And that's what I loved about the film, and we actually did consider changing it, and then I was just kind of like, you know what, this is, Mahesh and I, the director, Mahesh and I both felt very strongly that since this was money that, we had raised with great difficulty, and sweat and blood and tears, that we just needed to make the movie that we wanted to make, and the movie that we wanted to make didn't have everything wrapped up in a bow, and it was meant to be more realistic and not as a lot of the distributors said, let's make it a little less depressing at the end. That wasn't the point. I mean, I don't find it depressing. I see it as hopeful. I think these two had to repair their relationship in order to move forward as individuals. That's how I always looked at it. There's clearly something about these two that relationship needs to be resolved for them to continue as father and son properly, but also just to continue as human beings on their own through life. And that was the point. And to wrap it all up neatly in the bow, it was against everything that we kind of wanted to do with the film. So we just decided we'd do what we wanted to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, that would take it from real life to fairy tale.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think that there's always that pressure and I get it, I understand that, why everybody would want it, why distributors would want it wrapped up neatly for everybody, and everything's explained and everything's fine at the end. And but for me, that wasn't what this movie was about. It was about how difficult relationships can be, and how worthy relationships are worth trying to salvage. They're worth putting that effort in, and it's worth going through kind of bringing up all this horrible stuff that maybe you've spent your entire life suppressing. If letting it all bubble out will let you have a relationship with your father, then as awful as it will be, and as tough as it was to even film that scene, where everything just kind of comes to a head, in the end, it will enrich your relationship going forward, and that was kind of what we were trying to go for.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's almost as if the romances in the movie are a MacGuffin. That this is really a movie about a father and son. It's not a romance; it's a relationship movie.
No, absolutely, it is a relationship movie. And then the problem is that's how I used to describe it at first. Is it's a relationship movie
until you learn better.
Yeah, no, I didn't. Then everybody was like, okay, well, where's the relationship? Because the father doesn't end up with Mary Steenburgen, and the son doesn't end up with Maya. Like, what happened? And it's like, no, the relationship is between the father and the son. It's not, this isn't a romantic comedy. That's not what it is. And then, the people who've responded to the film understand that. I mean, it's kind of, in that sense, the response has been universal, because surprisingly, a a lot of people have difficult relationships with their parents, and there's a lot of parents who have very difficult relationships with their children. And those are the people who have kind of responded really positively to the film, and because they recognize some aspect of their lives in it.
The other thing that struck me is that this is a very human film. Obviously, you and Roshan Seth are Indian. The director is Indian, and yet this is not an ethnic film in any sense. I mean, this is a film about human beings who happen to be Indian, and that's not. And I'm wondering if that has helped or hindered you in terms of getting people interested in the film.
Distribution-wise, it's been a hindrance, definitely. Audience-wise, it seems to be something that people have been really into. You know, the audience is Indian and, you know, non-Indian alike have just liked the universality of it. But from a distributor point of view, that's what's been tough. Is
it's the distributors coming to get
the distributors coming get back at me. Distributor-wise, it's been difficult simply because almost universally we want it to be more Indian. We want the film to be more Indian, and so in that sense, the distributors haven't quite responded to it the way that we did, but Barking Cow did respond to it, so that's where we got lucky.
I saw the light back here, so I think that there are probably questions in the audience. If you have a question, raise your hand, someone will come to you with a microphone. Do we have the mic here? No, because we have a hand up here, so. Go ahead. There's another hand up down here.
Hi. A couple of questions. Just following up on what you just mentioned in the last question. Have you thought about taking this abroad, you know, where there is probably a larger Indian population, such as UK, but which has similar you know, issues as it might pertain to people living in the UK? My second question is more personal. Why didn't you follow up with your tennis career?
Well, for your first question, we do have a UK release planned later this year. We're talking with a distributor who's interested in releasing the film. I think it would be really great to release it in London, obviously, in Leicester would be really great, Birmingham, places like that. So we're talking to specialty distributors in the UK, and we have had interest. We're just trying to work out a deal with that. As far as the tennis career goes, that was always my dream, was to be a professional tennis player. I'm kind of doing my safety profession was acting, believe it or not. No, I wanted to be a professional tennis player. I got injured. I had shoulder surgery, and I had a scholarship to college, but I had to drop it because I got hurt. Which is probably a good thing, because in the end, I wasn't good enough to go professional. I was a good tennis player. I wasn't a great tennis player. So in the end, I think it ended up, I was crushed when it happened. I was in high school when I had to quit playing competitively. But it's also the reason that I kind of found acting in the end. So everything happens for a reason.
Down here.
Oh, hi. I thought the movie was great, and first of all, I have two questions. I find the title very philosophical, Brahmin Bulls. I'd like you to say that. And I also found the soundtrack very special, because there was a lot of quiet music which set the mood, and I'd like you to say something about that. Thank you.
Absolutely. The title was, for the longest time, the title was the untitled Sendhil Ramamurthy project. They couldn't, Mahesh, who's the director, co-wrote it with his now wife, but when they started writing it, they were not married. Which is really surprising, because when you're writing together, you're fighting all the time, which I guess is like marriage. So maybe it does make sense. But they couldn't, nobody could come up with a title for the film. And there were a couple of suggestions. I tried to remember some of them at a different Q&A, and I couldn't. They were all horrible. And Mahesh, he had a dream, basically. Brahmin Bulls popped into his head, and he said, "This is what the title's going to be." And I was like, "Man, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand." He's like, "Well, you know, it came to me in the dream, so I think it's right. But you know, Brahmin can refer to obviously the Indian heritage, and the Bulls, they're butting heads, and Brahmin, they're from Boston, so there's Boston Brahmins as well." And I was like, all right, I mean, I'm still lobbying for untitled Sendhil Ramamurthy project, to be quite honest. But if you like Brahmin Bulls, then we'll go with Brahmin Bulls. That's basically how the title came up. It was in a dream.
And the music?
Oh, and the music, yes. The music was done by Ginger Shankar, who is Ravi Shankar's granddaughter. And we had no business having her do the music for our film. She did the music for The Passion of the Christ, and these really big budget, things, basically jobs I could afford to pay her, and we couldn't. And she heard about our film, and she came and saw a cut of it, and she said, "Listen, I love this film, and I would love to do the music." And we said, "We would love for you to do the music, but we can't afford you." And she said, what can we afford? And we threw out some embarrassingly low number. And she said, "I'll do it." And that's basically how we got her to do it. Was she just liked the film, and she wanted to be a part of it. And she did an amazing job. Even the end song is, God, his name's going out of my head, the lead singer for Vampire Weekend. He was a friend of the DP. And that's how we got that song. That song itself would have probably been a rather significant portion of our budget. But we were able to get it just calling in favors. The whole film was calling in favors and asking people to work for either 1/10 of what they normally work for, or free. In my case, I didn't get paid. I gave my salary to Roshan so we could get Roshan over from India. So it was really a labor of love, and certainly in my case a financial deficit. but artistically, it was the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. So
over here.
I thought that the film ended perfectly, and I thought it was just totally lovely and excruciating and exquisite, and the relationships were so authentic and real. So I really laud you for putting together a really wonderful film. My question, you're welcome.
No, just stop. No, let's just leave that hanging in the air for a minute.
So my question is this, on another note, you were my favorite character in Heroes, and I was wondering how for you personally, it compares working in television media and motion pictures.
It's very different. There's the thing that I love the most about shooting a lot of the scenes in this film was silence, and how, actually Marshall and I were talking about this in the bar earlier, was those moments of silence that are in film. And a TV show, you're on a treadmill, you got to churn that episode out. It's 42 minutes, you got to produce it for every week. It's 42 minutes of TV and 18 minutes of commercials. That's what you're looking at on network television. And there is no room for silence. There is no room for rehearsal. There is you just can't do any of that stuff. And this was, by the time we shot this, I had been doing Heroes straight for 5 years, and I was in my 3rd year of Covert Affairs, and I'd been doing a lot of TV going through, and you know, really grateful for the work. You know, as an actor, if you're working, you know, great, but I was feeling like artistically completely depleted. I didn't feel, you know, because a lot of the stuff, especially in Heroes, you know, you're acting with a green screen 50% of the time. You're not even talking to anybody who's there. Like the script supervisor's off stage shouting your lines, and you're talking to, you know, somebody who's flying in the air who's not really there. So this was kind of the anti-that for me, which is why I wanted to get it going. And you know, that's the difference. Is even on a film like this where we had no money and no budget, we still budgeted time, meaning everybody agreed to show up for free to rehearse the scenes, and that was a huge departure for me. It just brought me back to theater, you know, which is where I started, was doing theater. And so that's the major difference, is A, silence, which is for me very powerful, and rehearsal and time, because TV doesn't, you don't have time.
Over here.
Yes, I too enjoyed it very much on many different levels. As a daughter.
Do you have the microphone? I'm sorry.
As a daughter,
Oh,
a
someone else at
mother.
the end. She's bringing you the microphone. Here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. As a daughter, a mother, and a grandmother. And the point for me that, according to the silence, was the father, and that I felt he was the catalyst, while the son does react. But he was a catalyst in many ways to bring peace, I think, to the woman that he had wronged, to the son that he felt he hadn't fulfilled. And as he goes through the film, he doesn't say anything. He looks. He looks at the empty cabinet. He looks at the son's room and the chaos of his life and his home. And then, just as we do, where we go in and we see what's lacking, he went to the garden, again, to be the catalyst and to hopefully inspire his son to fulfill his dream. So that just made the film.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that, because we, you know, that was something that Roshan really worked on. Well, I don't think this is super. Roshan doesn't have children. You know, Roshan doesn't have children, and so we actually had a lot of conversations about that, and you know, and I quite frankly felt really useless in those conversations, because I actually have a really great relationship with my father, and so a lot of it just came from imagination, and a lot of that stuff came from Roshan and I just sitting in chairs talking in between setups, you know, and we kind of built, because I'd already been shooting for a week before Roshan showed up. We had visa problems and bringing him over, and our lawyer had to, you know, speed it along. And so I shot for a week before he even showed up. And so I didn't get a chance to spend any time with Roshan before we started shooting, which I really wanted. I actually showed up to LA a week early, in anticipation of getting to spend some time with him, and then all this stuff happened, which is, you know, again, independent film. It's what, you know, we would walk onto the set every day thinking, okay, what's going to go wrong next, you know?
Are you telling me that the United States government wouldn't give a visa to an artist of the stature of Roshan and Seth?
Oh, they would. They just didn't want to give it in the time frame that we wanted it. And basically, we applied a little late. And it's more on us than immigration.
Well, there goes my outrage.
Yeah, in this very rare, limited instance, it was mostly on us. You know, a lot of those scenes also, when he walks in, as you said, he observes. There was dialogue, there was stuff, and that's one of the beautiful things that happened in this film, and I think probably in most independent film, is you just run out of time, you run out of money, so you have to compress scenes. And so the scene where he walks in and he just kind of looks and he sees it's an empty, and he realizes that half of the closet is empty and half of it isn't. you see it all happening. That was all due to lack of time. And that was Roshan, just like, all right, well, this is what we'll do. The scene where we come home from the bar, stumbling into the house drunk, that was completely improvised. That wasn't in the script. There were 2 scenes that got us back to the house in between the bar and the house, and we just ran out of time. So we improvised that. The goodbye scene where I walk Roshan's character out to the car and he drives away, that was completely improvised. That wasn't in the scene, in the screenplay. So it was those things, while stressful during the day while we were shooting it, ended up being some of the most, for me, magical moments of the film. Simply because, lack of time can sometimes, for procrastinators out there, I think, if you run out of time, sometimes some of your best stuff can come out of it.
But don't take that as a way of life.
Yes.
I know I got a question over here, but let me ask you, did you know Roshan Seth before this?
I knew of him. I'd never met him before, but I've been a huge fan of his work. I don't know, for those of you who don't know, he played Nehru and Gandhi for Richard Attenborough, and Mississippi Masala, and I've actually seen him on stage as well. He's just a wonderful actor, and he was our first choice for this, but he was more like the dream choice. We